The silver tray doesn't slip all at once. It goes slowly, the way things do when a body has finally run out of ways to hold on. Lyrienne Vale feels her fingers loosen before she understands why. Then the tray tilts. Then the wine goes. And then she is on the floor, knees against cold marble, and the sound of breaking glass is somehow the quietest thing in the room. For a second, nobody moves. The musicians play 3 more notes before the strings die. 3 notes. Like even they needed a moment to decide what they were witnessing. Grapes scatter into the boots of northern lords. A gold goblet rolls in a crooked, lazy circle before striking the base of the Alpha King's throne. Wine bleeds outward across white stone. Lyrienne presses her palm to the floor. Get up. Get up now. Before they remember your name. She tries. Her arm gives. A servant on the eastern wall lowers his eyes. Stares at nothing. Becomes very interested in the middle distance. Coward. Lucky coward. Soft laughter drifts from somewhere near the lower tables. Not loud. Not cruel enough to be honest. Just contained. The kind that wants to pretend it isn't there while making sure you hear it. Lady Maven rises from her seat the way women with power always move, slowly, deliberately, making the room wait for them. Dark velvet drags across the marble as she approaches. She looks at Lyrienne the way you look at something that has broken in an inconvenient place. You disgrace this house, she says, during the frost moon accord. The words hit somewhere deeper than they should. Lyrienne lowers her head. Loose strands of dark auburn hair fall across her face.
Stick to damp skin.
I can clean it, she says. Quietly. The way you say things when you've learned that volume costs you. You can barely stand. Another ripple of amusement circles the nobles. Above them, chandeliers burn gold against the vaulted ceiling of Velmora Keep, enormous and indifferent, while servants continue pouring wine around her collapsed body as if this scene is simply part of the evening's entertainment. Lyrienne braces her hand harder against the floor. Stand up. Stand up right now. Her arm gives a second time, and that's when the silence changes. It doesn't grow louder. It grows heavier. A different kind of quiet. The kind that moves through a room when power notices something it wasn't supposed to notice. She feels it before she sees it. At the head of the table, Alpha King Cassian Draven sets his goblet down on black oak. The sound barely exists, but it touches every corner of the hall. He doesn't look at the nobles. Doesn't look at Lady Maven. Doesn't look at the spilled wine or the scattered bread or the broken social order of his own banquet. He looks at her. Cold gray eyes. Unmoving. The chandeliers crackle faintly overhead. Don't look at him. Looking back only makes it worse. Cassian Draven does not interrupt treaty banquets. Does not acknowledge servants. Does not let anything resembling emotion exist inside court walls. Everyone knows this, which is why no one speaks. Get up, Lady Maven says sharply. Lyrienne tries. Pain floods through her legs, so fast her breath catches mid-pull. The edges of the hall begin to darken, not dramatically, just closing in. The way vision does when the body has been quiet about something for too long and finally stops being quiet. Somewhere distant, a chair scrapes against marble. Then her body folds. She doesn't reach the floor. An arm catches her at the waist. Gasps break across the room. Real ones, the kind that happen before people can decide whether to have them. Cassian is beside her. One moment, he's at the head of the table beneath the carved throne of the Northern Dominion. The next, his hand is steadying her like he crossed the entire hall without touching the ground. She freezes. He is warm, solid. The scent of cedar smoke beneath layers of black ceremonial fur. Silver chains against his chest. A grip that doesn't hurt, but doesn't ask permission either. He looks at her face once. His jaw hardens. When did you last eat? The question lands the way accusations do. Hard, direct, stripping away every layer of social performance until there's nothing left to stand behind. The entire hall waits for her answer. Lyrienne is very aware of that. Lady Maven steps forward quickly. Your Majesty, she has always been. Cassian lifts one finger. Doesn't look at the older woman. She stops speaking mid-sentence. Just stops. Lyrienne stares at the spilled bread near her hand. 3 days ago, a kitchen maid dropped half a loaf into the ash bin behind the servants' quarters. Lyrienne had waited until midnight, counted the footsteps, waited until the corridor stayed silent long enough. Lady Maven found out the next morning. If you lie, Cassian says quietly, I'll know. Wolf-blood kings smell fear. Illness. Weakness. Everyone in the Northern Dominion knows it. It's told to children before they're old enough to understand why. Lyrienne looks at the bread. 3 days, she whispers. The silence that follows feels alive. A noblewoman near the western table lowers her goblet. Slowly. Sets it down like she's trying not to make a sound. Another looks away entirely. Cassian's hand tightens around her waist. Not cruelly. More like someone holding themselves back from something worse. You starve her, he asks. Lady Maven straightens immediately. She is a servant under my authority. Cassian looks at her then. Finally. The temperature in the hall seems to drop 2 degrees. She stands inside my kingdom, he says. The words don't echo. They don't need to. That makes her under mine. Several council members exchange looks.
Fast. Sharp.
Lyrienne stares at him. Why would a king say that? For one fractured second, just one, the fury leaves Cassian's face. And what replaces it is worse than fury. Worse than indifference. Recognition. The kind that lives in someone's eyes when they've been looking for something for a long time. A bell sounds somewhere deep beneath Velmora keep.
Once.
Then again. Every wolf-blood noble in the hall stiffens. A guard rushes through the banquet doors. Snow on his cloak. Down to one knee before the words even come. Your Majesty. His voice is unsteady. Another northern village has gone dark. Nobody moves. Cassian's eyes never leave Lyrienne. And for the first time since she hit the marble floor, the cold that spreads through her body has nothing to do with hunger. He carries her out before another voice can stop him. The corridor beyond the banquet hall is colder. Torchlight bends against black stone carved directly into the cliffs above Norhollow Bay. Wind pushes through the fortress walls somewhere far beneath them. Cassian walks quickly. Too quickly for calm. Guards straighten as he passes. Several stare at Lyrienne in his arms before forcing their eyes forward. She can feel the questions trailing behind them through the halls like smoke. Why her? Why now? Why does the king look like he's deciding whether to burn the whole keep down? He pushes through iron doors at the top of the western tower. Warmth hits first. Then firelight. The royal chamber overlooks the frozen sea through enormous arched windows rimmed in frost. Cedar smoke from the stone hearth. Old maps on the shelves. War ledgers. Midnight blue curtains moving faintly in the draft. He sets her on the long couch near the fire. Too carefully. Like something fragile he doesn't have a word for yet. Servants appear before she has time to look around. Blankets, trays, bread, stew thick with venison, honey, tea. The smell hits her so hard her vision blurs. She reaches for the bread before she can stop herself. Cassian catches her wrist. Slow. Heat rushes into her face. Hunger she could survive. This is something else. The servants retreat. None of them without staring first. Cassian remains near the fire. Watching. Lyrienne tears a small piece of bread. Forces herself to chew slowly while her stomach pulls violently for more. The storm outside rattles the tower windows. She looks up. Why are you doing this? He doesn't answer immediately. Firelight shifts across his face, catching the hard line of his jaw. Something moving through his expression that hasn't fully decided what it is yet. You survived longer than you should have, he says finally. Her grip tightens on the bread. What does that mean? He moves toward the window, rests one hand against cold stone. Below them, torches move frantically across the fortress walls in the dark. The killings began 6 nights ago, he says. The bread sits heavy in her mouth. The same night your 24th winter began. The bread slips from her fingers.
No.
Cassian turns back to her. His expression is not cold now. It's worse. A man trying very hard not to confirm his own fear. You feel it already, he says. And she opens her mouth to say something. Anything that would make this smaller than it is. But the floor trembles first. A deep metallic groan rolls through the fortress beneath them. Shouts erupt somewhere below the western courtyard. Then again heavier. Iron collapsing inward. A guard slams through the chamber doors. The eastern gate has fallen. A breath. And Lady Maven is gone. You knew, Lyrienne says. Cassian doesn't answer. He's at the weapons rack already, pulling steel free in one clean motion. That's answer enough. The guard keeps his eyes low. The watchtower fires near the lower cliffs went dark before the breach. Captain Hervik. Where is Hervik?
A pause.
He's dead, Your Majesty. The room goes quiet except for the storm. Cassian fastens the sword across his back without looking up. Seal the inner corridors. No one enters or leaves without my order. Lord Rennick already summoned the council chamber. That stops him. He turns slowly. The fire seems quieter when he does it. Did I give Lord Rennick my authority? No, Your Majesty. Then remind the council what happens when they mistake fear for permission. The guard disappears.
The doors slam.
The chamber contracts into silence. Lyrienne pulls the blanket tighter. You locked the city down before the gate fell. The attacks move faster every night. You still haven't told me what's attacking them. His jaw tightens once. Before he can answer, the doors open again. Lord Rennick Valer enters without bowing. Not fully. His eyes land on Lyrienne before they land on Cassian. Just for a second. Long enough for something to pass between him and the room that isn't spoken. The council is demanding a public statement. Cassian says nothing. Rennick steps further in. Fear has sharpened him, visible in the way he holds his shoulders, the careful weight he's placing on every word. The lower districts already believe hollow fever reached Velmora. If panic spreads before sunrise. It already spread. Rennick's gaze moves to Lyrienne again. Too briefly for politeness. Long enough for accusation. Hollow fever gives people something understandable to fear, he says. That matters right now. A silence opens between Cassian and Rennick that feels old. Not from tonight. Something buried beneath years of restraint that neither of them have fully excavated yet. Cassian walks to the map table near the windows. 3 circles. Fresh black ink. Northern territories east of the cliffs. 3 villages. All gone. Hollow fever does not tear watchtowers apart, Cassian says. Rennick doesn't respond. He looks at the map. Then at Lyrienne. Then at the map. She arrives at court, he says softly, and 6 nights later, villages begin disappearing. Lyrienne looks down at the untouched stew. The smell has gone sour. You think I caused this? No one answers. That silence is its own kind of answer. Outside, another bell. Closer this time. Rennick folds his hands behind his back. The council believes containment may calm the territories before rebellion spreads. Containment. The word settles cold beneath her ribs. Cassian moves away from the table slowly. Every guard in the chamber straightens at once. Not because they were told to, because something in his movement requires it. You want to hand starving girls to frightened nobles, he says quietly, because it makes weak men sleep better. Rennick's jaw tightens. I want the Dominion standing by winter's end. And if you're wrong, a long pause. Rennick looks at Lyrienne directly. Then one servant dies. The fire snaps. The room tilts toward her. Not invisible anymore. Not ignored. Wade. Cassian steps between her and the council guards. Doesn't look back. No one touches her. After Rennick leaves, stiff bow, incomplete, the chamber settles into the specific quiet of things that have been said that cannot be unsaid. Lyrienne stares at the map. 3 circles. East of Norhollow Bay. Near valleys she somehow recognizes without having seen them. That's wrong. That's wrong and she knows it, and she can't explain why. Voices drift faintly through the corridor outside. Guards. Low enough to avoid notice. Not low enough. She matches the old records. A second voice, immediately. That's impossible. Draven's been searching those dead valleys for years. A pause. Then quieter. The missing bloodline was supposed to be extinct. Lyrienne stops breathing. Cassian hears it too. She sees it in his shoulders, the shift that isn't surprise. It's recognition that's been waiting for confirmation. Then the bell sounds. From beneath the keep. Not the alarm bells from the walls. Something older. Slower. One deep strike rolling upward through stone. Her stomach tightens. Wrong. It sounds wrong. The way something sounds when it belongs inside your body and shouldn't. The firelight bends sideways against the walls. Outside, wolves begin howling across the lower courtyard. Then stop. All at once. The silence that replaces it is too complete. What is that? She asks. The bell sounds again. Closer? No. Not closer. Louder inside her. She presses her hand against her chest without deciding to. Something beneath her ribs answers the sound. A pulse. Ancient. Heavy. Like recognizing a voice from a dream. 2 palace hounds are dragged past the open doorway. Massive gray beasts bred for mountain warfare, pulling hard against their chains. They reach the threshold and recoil. One snarls violently. The other whines low, broken, and tears backward hard enough to nearly pull free. Both staring directly at Lyrienne. Fur raised. Eyes too wide. The guards say nothing. Cassian closes the door himself. Hard. The iron latch slams into place. Lyrienne looks at him. They smelled me. No. His voice stays quiet. They recognized you. The passage beneath Velmora is older than the fortress that was built on top of it. Smooth stone gives way to carved rock. The symbols worn nearly invisible by centuries of frost. Torchlight thins until it barely exists. Lyrienne's fingertips brush the wall without meaning to. A flash, sharp, unwelcome. Snow covered in blood. A woman screaming. Silver chains dragged across ice. She jerks her hand back. Gone. Cassian is watching her. Of course he is. What did you see? Nothing. He watches her a moment longer, then keeps walking. The passage opens into a vast chamber beneath the cliffs of Norhollow Bay. Ice covers half the walls in thick pale blue layers. Ancient pillars rise from frozen water beneath the floor grates. Rusted iron braziers, cold, standing dark around a circular stone platform carved into the center of the chamber. The bell's sound stops the instant they enter. The silence that replaces it is not neutral. It is expectant. Lyrienne steps forward. Her boots scrape across frost. The symbols around the platform twist strangely beneath the ice. Not letters. Marks. Old enough to feel like they're thinking. She kneels before she realizes she's moved. Why is she moving? Whispers beneath the stone. Not words. Just voices. dozens of them pressing faintly upward through frozen rock. Lyrienne. Cassian reaches for her. Too late. Her fingers touch the seal. Ice cracks outward. A pulse tears through the chamber, extinguishing 3 torches at once. Heat sears through her wrist, not on the surface. Deeper. Through skin and bone and something she doesn't have a name for. She stumbles back, grabs her arm. The cloak sleeve falls. Dark markings spread across the inside of her wrist. Twisting lines. Glowing faintly in the frost blue light. Cassian goes still. For the first time since the banquet hall, control leaves his face completely. Because she can see it now, beneath the edge of his loosened collar. The exact same mark, burning across his shoulder. Neither of them speaks for a moment. The frost cracks softly beneath her boots as she backs away from the seal. Her wrist pulses like a second heartbeat she didn't consent to. She pulls the cloak tighter, not for warmth, for something to hold. Cassian doesn't move toward her. That's the thing that frightens her. Every other time she's been in danger tonight, he's moved toward it. Toward her. Immediately, like reflex.
Not now.
What is this, if it gives even him pause? What am I? She asks. The words come out harder than she intended. Not accusation exactly. More like something that's been sitting in her throat for 24 years and has finally run out of room. Cassian looks down at the mark on his own shoulder. Then away. The storm moans somewhere above the cliffs. You are never supposed to survive long enough for that mark to return, he says. She stares at him. The pulse beneath her wrist answers again. An ache moving through blood and bone like it's looking for something. He walks to the edge of the frozen platform. When the red winter began, he says, keeping his voice careful, controlled, the northern territories split apart. Entire bloodlines disappeared within months. A flicker behind her eyes.
Snow.
Fire. A child crying somewhere in the dark. She presses her fingers against her temple. Cassian notices. Keep speaking. The old rites frightened people long before the uprising. Families carrying those bloodlines were blamed for every famine, every failed harvest, every winter that lasted too long. The whispers beneath the ice grow louder. Fragments now. Not words, but something adjacent to them. Dozens of voices pressing upward through the stone. They hunted all of you, Cassian says. All of you.
Not them. Not those people.
Something cold slides into her stomach. There was one child they couldn't find.
No.
She shakes her head before he finishes. You were hidden inside House Vale. The denial dies in her throat. A memory breaks through without warning. A woman kneeling in snow. Cold hands gripping her face. Stay quiet. No matter what happens. Stay quiet.
Gone.
Lyrienne grabs the edge of the stone platform. I don't remember any of this. You weren't meant to. His jaw tightens visibly. The people who had you erased what they could before placing you in the servant ranks of Velmora keep. The silence that follows sits between them like something that's been there a long time, just finally named. You knew. Her voice is very quiet. He says nothing. That's enough. You knew where I was.
No.
Immediate. Sharp. Not where. He steps toward her and stops himself halfway, something rare and slightly unsteady crossing his face. I found traces. Records destroyed too late. Witnesses who disappeared afterward. Rumors about a child hidden during the Red Winter. He looks at her wrist. I spent 6 years searching the northern valleys. A pause. Before the wrong people found you first. 6 years. 6 years. While she scrubbed banquet floors. While she dug spoiled bread from ash bins in the middle of the night and counted footsteps in corridors and learned how to make her face empty enough that no one looked at it too long. None of it accidental. The realization doesn't arrive with anger. It arrives with something emptier than anger. A hollowing. You left me there, she says. Not accusation. Worse. Just true. Cassian closes his eyes for one brief second, and in that second she understands. Not everything, but enough. He failed before.
Badly.
And it left marks that guilt has been carrying forward ever since. When the red winter reached the eastern valleys, he says carefully, I wasn't king yet. She watches his hand tighten at his side. My father ordered the northern purges himself. Another flash, black wolf banners moving through falling snow. A child beneath wooden floorboards. Boots overhead. By the time I understood what he was doing, Cassian says, entire bloodlines were already gone. The ice cracks faintly around them. She looks at the mark on her wrist, then at his shoulder. You carry it too. Not by blood. He pulls back the edge of his collar. The mark on his shoulder is older, scarred around the edges, like something that was put there rather than grown. A binding seal, placed on the royal line generations ago, to contain what your bloodline guarded beneath the northern valleys. Guarded. Not caused. Not unleashed. Guarded. She feels the difference immediately. It lands differently in the body. The whispers beneath the ice swell, then stop, like they heard her understand it. A long silence settles between them. Then Lyrienne looks at the frozen seal in the center of the platform. Lady Maven knew. Cassian doesn't deny it. She suspected. The banquet hall replays in full clarity. Untouched platters. Hands pulling bowls away. Laughter meant to reduce. Starvation calibrated. Not incidental. She kept me hungry. Yes. The chamber goes colder.
Why?
A pause. Because the weaker your body became, he says quietly, the slower the mark awakened. She stops breathing. Above them, somewhere inside Velmora Keep, another containment bell begins its slow count through the storm. The witness is still on his knees when the doors slam behind Cassian. Snow melts off his cloak in dark streams across the stone. He trembles so violently his teeth click. His eyes are fixed on Lyrienne, not on the king, on her. She stands near the hearth, too still. Fingers curled around a wooden bowl she stopped touching a long time ago. The food she's been keeping down for days should have strengthened her. And it has. Just not in the way anyone expected. She is sharper somehow. More present. Like her body is remembering a shape it was always supposed to have, but wasn't allowed to hold. The witness tries to speak. Breath tears itself apart first. Cassian steps closer, blocking Lyrienne from the man's line of sight without thinking. Say it. The man chokes.
Twice.
A shadow, he rasps. It wore her face. Silence drops, so hard the fire hesitates. Lyrienne's fingers loosen. The bowl tilts. Tap stone. A small, clean sound that somehow carries more weight than the confession. Cassian glances at her before he can stop himself. She hasn't moved, but something in her expression has shifted inward, like she's listening to something beneath the room, beneath the stone itself. The witness keeps going, words collapsing over each other. In the blizzard North Road settlement, everyone was inside. Then the wind stopped, like it was told to. His breath breaks, and she walked through the snow barefoot, smiling. Lyrienne flinches. Just slightly. Cassian notices. That's the first fracture, not fear of being accused. Recognition. The fire pops sharply. For a fraction of a second, the light bends wrong, stretching toward her shadow instead of away from it. Cassian feels it then. Not hears. Not sees. Feels. A pressure behind his ribs. Like the room has begun to inhale through her presence. He turns slightly, watches her, without looking like he's watching. Her skin is warmer than it should be near the hearth. a thin sheen of sweat at her temple despite the cold bleeding through the walls. "You said she was eating," he says quietly. To himself, not to the witness. The man nods rapidly.
Yes.
Finally keeping food. And that's when
He stops.
because Lyrienne has taken a step back. Not away from Cassian. Away from her own body. Her fingers press into her wrist, like she's checking whether something inside is still aligned. Her breath stutters. Steadies too quickly, like something correcting it. "I didn't go anywhere," she whispers. It doesn't sound like denial. It sounds like confusion. The veins beneath her skin are darker than they were yesterday. Cassian has seen this pattern before. Not in people. In things that begin with nourishment and end with mass graves. He hates that the thought lands so cleanly. The witness scrapes backward. 23 souls. Then the shadow came out of her face, split from her like smoke peeling off fire.
And it didn't leave.
It stayed after she was gone. Gone, Cassian repeats. She left before the killing finished. But the shadow, her face, it finished it. The bowl slips from Lyrienne's fingers completely. It doesn't break. It rolls once. Stops against Cassian's boot. No one picks it up. The fire dims for one breathless moment, like something has stepped between it and air. Cassian understands then. Fully.
Completely.
In the way that the worst realizations always arrive, not slowly, but all at once. The force is not inside her like a possession. It is anchored to her, feeding through distance, through fear, through every mind that orbits her with attention or dread, and through every moment she is kept alive. He exhales slowly, keeping her here,
Keeping her fed.
keeping her breathing in crowded places. It isn't protection, it's distribution. Lyrienne looks at him, as if she heard the thought form inside his skull. "No," she says, barely audible. Not refusal. Refusal of what she already understands. Her knees weaken slightly. She grips the table edge. And for just a moment, Cassian sees it, a flicker beneath her eyes. Something briefly looking out from behind her. He steps forward before he decides to. "Stay with me." Sharper than he intended. The words land wrong in his own mouth, because they are no longer just protection. They are containment. And he knows it. And she knows he knows it. The witness whispers again, smaller now. The shadow. It looked relieved when it was done. A pause. Then softer. Like it had been starving. The hearth cracks. A horn sounds somewhere beyond the walls. Long, uneven, cut short mid-note. Another settlement. Lyrienne sways. Cassian reaches out.
Stops.
His hand holds still in the air between them, because for the first time tonight, he isn't sure what touching her means. A knock at the door. Hard. 3 times. Then a voice, raw with cold and running. "Commander, there's a survivor from Northfire. They're saying it wasn't a raid." A pause. Then thinner. "They're saying the thing that killed them was wearing her face." The doors of Velmora do not open so much as surrender. Cassian feels the impact through stone before he reaches the hall. Shouting spills outward like a wound rupturing under pressure. The inner courtyard is packed, guards in uneven formation, council banners half-torn, snow crushed to mud beneath panicked boots. The air smells of wet wool, iron, and breath held too long. Fear has a sound here. A living thing moving through the crowd, louder every time it passes through another body. Monster. The word launches from somewhere near the eastern stairwell. Lands. Echoes. Multiplies. On the raised platform, the council has already gathered without waiting for him. That alone tells him how far this has shifted. How thin his authority has become. Lyrienne stands at the base of the steps. Not restrained. Not protected. Just visible. Too visible. The space around her has changed. Guards avoid looking at her directly. Not from discipline. From instinct. The body knowing something the mind hasn't caught up to. A man in the crowd throws something. It bursts against a pillar beside her head, damp fruit pulp sliding down white stone. Lyrienne doesn't flinch. That is what unsettles Cassian most. Not defiance. Not shock. The absence of either. Counselor Varen's voice cuts across the noise, sharpened by exhaustion. Velmora cannot absorb another night like the last. North Fire is gone. 3 settlements before it. The Dominion is unraveling at its spine. He pauses. Just long enough. The council demands immediate containment. Another pause. Smaller. Execution. The courtyard fractures into noise. Approval. Horror. Overlap. Lyrienne moves. Not toward the council. Not toward Cassian. A small shift of weight backward, measuring the distance between herself and a world that has decided it cannot hold her. Cassian steps onto the first stair.
No.
Silence doesn't come. Something worse does. Attention. Every sound bends toward him. Varen's face tightens. This is not a request. This is survival. Cassian takes the next step. I said no. The courtyard shifts. Not emotionally, structurally. Guards glance at each other. Not for permission. For alignment. A fracture forming in real time. Lyrienne's eyes find Cassian. Not pleading. Not relieved. Tired. As if his refusal costs her something she had already started preparing to give up. Counselor Myron steps forward, colder. If you protect her, you bind yourself to every death that follows. Cassian's jaw tightens. Behind him, a guard shifts position. Then another.
Not toward Lyrienne.
Away from Cassian. A soft, nearly imperceptible sound ripples through the crowd, steel adjusting in hands. Not drawn. Not yet. Readying. Lyrienne's hands are trembling. Barely. Like her body is remembering what fear is supposed to feel like. I didn't choose this, she says. It isn't directed at anyone in particular. It lands everywhere. The crowd answers with a single, collective step forward. Cassian feels the trap close. Not around her. Around both of them. He catches her gaze. For one moment, everything else drops away. Just her. And the thing beneath her. I know, he says quietly. It isn't enough. It was never going to be enough. A horn from the outer gate.
Once.
Then again. Irregular. A messenger crashes through the side arch and collapses before the council platform, armor streaming snowmelt. Lady Maven, he gasps. The name moves through the courtyard faster than fire. The messenger forces himself upright.
Fails. Says it anyway.
She returned from the eastern ridge. Wounded. Barely alive. He looks at the council. At Cassian. At Lyrienne. She says the attacks are being controlled. Absolute silence. The messenger swallows. By someone inside the royal bloodline. Lyrienne inhales once, small, involuntary. Cassian turns toward her. Not because he wants to. Because everything else has just stopped being stable enough to stand on. The courtyard holds its breath. Snow drips from broken banners into mud. Each drop is loud in the absence of everything else. Cassian knows before the messenger finishes. Counselor Varan says the name first. Norhollow Bay. It lands like a door being struck from the inside. That place was never just geography. It was a warning carved into old Dominion maps and then deliberately, carefully forgotten. The messenger tries to rise.
Can't.
The cliffs, they're cracking. Ice tunnels forming beneath the shore. Something is pulling from below. Lyrienne looks away from Cassian. That small movement is the first true loss of this moment. Not trust. Not alliance. Attention. something inside her orienting toward a call that only she can hear. "I've seen that place," she whispers. No one responds, because no one wants to confirm she's allowed to know it. Counselor Myron steps forward sharply. The disappearances weren't random raids. They were weakening cycles, preparing access. Cassian feels something in his memory resist the shape of this. That resistance is the warning. Lyrienne's hands curl slowly at her sides. "I didn't open anything," she says. The wind presses against stone in long, low waves. The world itself leaning the same direction. He steps down from the platform, crosses to her, close enough to see the fine tremor in her throat when she swallows. "They're not just dying," he says quietly. It isn't a question. She doesn't answer, because they both already know what comes next. The messenger coughs violently. The gate beneath the ice, they said it moves when she is near, like it recognizes. He stops. Starts again. Her bloodline. A collective shift ripples through the courtyard, directed entirely at her. Lyrienne takes one step back, then stops herself. Retreating is being measured now. Cassian feels it tightening. Not symbolic, mechanical. A countdown enforced by collapsing geography elsewhere. Norhollow Bay is already changing. Opening. "Seal it," Varan says. "Close it before the winter solstice reaches full alignment." That is all that remains of the timeline. Winter solstice. A locking point. A final hinge. If it completes, whatever is beneath Norhollow Bay doesn't just emerge. It stabilizes. Becomes permanent. Lyrienne's breath goes shallow. She takes a small step toward the center of the courtyard. Not toward the council. Not toward Cassian. Toward decision. "I can feel it," she says softly. Cassian's hand moves before he decides to, catching her wrist. Her skin is too warm. Not fever.
Response.
She looks down at his grip, then at him. And for the first time since all of this began, her expression isn't confusion, isn't fear. It's calculation shaped around grief. "If it's my bloodline," she says quietly, "then it will keep opening as long as I live." His grip tightens.
No.
One word. Too late to mean anything clean. The council speaks over itself now. Containment protocols, blood-binding alternatives, succession concern, the language of systems trying to rename their own collapse. Cassian stops hearing it. Only the narrowing remains. Sacrifice. Or binding. He releases her wrist. The absence feels like stepping off a ledge. Counselor Myron approaches again. Voice controlled, with visible effort. There is an alternative. Contained in the old Dominion rights. Forbidden, but recorded. Even the guards still. Bind her life to the Alpha King through irreversible convergence. Cassian goes quiet in a way that has nothing to do with silence. He understands immediately. The cost isn't metaphorical. It's identity level. Shared corruption. Two lives collapsing into one unstable authority. Power that closes the gate but rewrites whatever carries it afterward. Lyrienne's eyes find his. Just once. Something passes between them that isn't spoken. Not consent. Not refusal. Recognition that every remaining path destroys something that cannot be restored. Wind slams through the courtyard gates, scattering snow across stone like ash. Lyrienne's voice barely carries. "If I go there, people stop dying?" No one answers quickly enough. That delay is the answer. Cassian steps closer. "You don't decide alone." But even as he says it, he knows the truth has already shifted past him. Because every death already carries her shape inside it. And every future now depends on what she's willing to become. Silence settles. This kind has weight. It presses down until breath feels negotiated. Then Lyrienne exhales. Slow. Steadying. The way you breathe when you've chosen where to let yourself fall. I will go, she says. Cassian's head turns slightly. Not surprise. Recognition of inevitability finally breaking its last restraint. But she's already moving before anyone can respond. One step back from him. One step toward herself. Her voice doesn't shake. I won't let it keep taking them, because I exist. Cassian reaches for her again. Her hand lifts first. Not toward him. Not toward the council. Inward. Toward the unseen structure beneath all of it. She speaks the words no one was permitted to say aloud. I accept the binding. The air doesn't just shift. It breaks. Not metaphorically. Structurally. Snow lifts slightly from the courtyard stones as if gravity has forgotten its instruction for one suspended second. Cassian's voice is immediate, sharp with something very close to panic. Lyrienne don't. But she has already stepped into the space between decisions. The council surges forward. Guards shout. Someone draws steel. Cassian moves. The world tightens around her choice like a lock completing. She finishes the first invocation step before anyone reaches her. The binding rite begins itself. And every remaining option Cassian has collapses into a single irreversible point as she chooses it alone. She is already speaking when the world fractures open. The words of the rite don't belong to her voice anymore. They belong to something older, forcing itself through her throat, pulling air into shape like it remembers how speech was made before language existed. Cassian reaches her as the courtyard erupts, guards rushing, council overriding, steel half-drawn and then forgotten as the ground beneath Norhollow's distant line answers her. A vibration rolls through Velmora Keep, not sound, recognition. The stone under Cassian's boots warms abruptly, like something beneath the dominion has opened an eye. Stop it, Lyrienne. He forces the words through clenched teeth. She doesn't look at him. Her eyes are locked beyond the courtyard walls, beyond geography, beyond anything he can follow her into. Snow begins to lift, not fall. Lift, spiraling upward and thin, disoriented streams as the ritual completes its first irreversible point. He grabs her wrist. Too late. The moment skin meets skin, the world stops obeying separation. Pain arrives first. Not sharp. Total. Cassian drops to one knee as something floods through him that is not his. Cold darkness. A long, starving absence. Pressed against bone. Then, Lyrienne's life. He feels it before he understands it. Hunger that never ends cleanly. Days where food existed but not for her. Nights where silence was a punishment shaped like a room. Hands pulling bowls away mid-reach. Laughter that never said her name correctly. The gradual shrinking of a body learning how to survive by disappearing inside itself. His breath breaks. He sees it. Not imagines.
Sees.
Younger Lyrienne in a cold chamber beneath stone stairs, counting footsteps outside, so she knows when to stop hoping. Fingers shaking as she hides scraps she was never meant to keep. Eyes going dull on command so no one looks long enough to hurt her. Cassian gasps as though he has been starving for weeks. Enough. The rite doesn't interpret commands. It interprets connection.
And it answers.
Lyrienne jerks as something enters her. Cassian's memory. Red winter. Snow falling over burned banners. Ash and frozen wind. A gate mission gone wrong, orders too late or never sent. A younger commander at a sealed checkpoint while a family waits behind him. He'd refused the breach order. He'd believed delay was mercy. He remembers the moment the frost overtook the settlement anyway. He remembers the name he wasn't supposed to forget. A name that belongs to Lyrienne's family. Her breath breaks in the same second his memory reaches her. Neither body belongs solely to itself anymore. The courtyard erupts, but it feels distant, sound filtered through water. He can see guards moving but hear nothing clearly except the shared pulse between them, sinking unwillingly, painfully, into one unstable rhythm. The gate beneath Norhollow Bay responds, not physically,
conceptually,
like a lock being convinced that keys were always optional. Lyrienne collapses to her knees. Cassian falls with her. Their foreheads nearly touch, breath mingling in air that is being rewritten around them. And then the exchange completes. He feels her starvation sharpen into clarity he cannot put down. Every moment of being present and still considered disposable becomes a weight that lives in him now. She inhales sharply as red winter floods through her. She sees his choice at the gate. Not noble, not justified, just human failure stretched too long under command pressure. She sees the families that weren't saved not because he didn't care, but because he didn't arrive in time to matter. Her eyes shake. His hands tremble against the stone. Neither of them can locate where their grief begins or ends. The ground beneath Norhollow Bay responds with a deep, resonant shift. Something enormous sealing. Cassian feels it through Lyrienne's spine. The gate is closing, but not cleanly, not safely, locking with both of them inside its consequence. One final surge tears through the bond. He screams, it's shared. She cries, it's shared. And then, silence. Absolute. Snow drops back to the ground. Gravity reasserts itself in shaking relief. The courtyard is still, not calm. Aftershocks still moving through every body present. Cassian remains on his knees beside Lyrienne. Neither moves away. Neither can. Something fundamental has changed in how they exist. Council voices attempt to return. They sound one layer removed now. Like the world steps slightly back from both of them. He tries to stand. Fails. Not from injury. From loss. Authority feels thinner in his hands. Like something essential was traded at a price neither of them fully saw coming. Lyrienne lifts her head. Her face is wet. She doesn't seem to notice. We did it, she whispers. Not triumph. Confirmation. Cassian nods once. The gate beneath Norhollow Bay is sealed. For now. Neither of them feels anything resembling victory in it. Only cost. A wind moves through Velmora keep and for a brief second Cassian thinks it carries something else beneath it. A second breath beneath the ice. A second presence that didn't leave when the gate closed. Lyrienne stiffens. Pupils tighten. Cassian notices immediately. What? She stops him with a look. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. Slowly, as if the act of hearing it might make it real, she turns her head toward the empty air. And whispers. Someone is still there. Cassian follows her gaze into nothing. The silence that answers is not empty. It is listening. The bells beneath Velmora Keep are still ringing when Cassian realizes no one else hears them. Not fully. Not the way Lyrienne does. She stands at the edge of the Frost Moon platform, fingers curled slightly into her sleeve. The courtyard below completes its ceremony, guards repositioning torches, council members speaking in controlled fragments, nobles performing composure they don't entirely have. But beneath all of it, the sound persists. Low, buried, patient. Cassian watches Lyrienne's expression tighten in small, involuntary increments. She isn't reacting to the ceremony. She is listening through it. Counselors shift their positions around both of them without openly acknowledging why. Distance formed not by decree, but by instinct. The body knowing what the mouth won't say. Cassian notices. He doesn't correct it. That silence becomes its own kind of authority. Lady Maven stands at the far end of the hall, wrapped in bandages that have not fully stopped seeping. She waits until the formalities collapse into uneasy stillness. Her voice is lower than before. not weakened.
Careful.
The Dominion believes Norhollow Bay is contained, she says. No one interrupts. They are wrong. A ripple moves through the nobles, small, restrained, like a body refusing to fully acknowledge cold. Cassian watches Lyrienne's wrist. The sleeve has shifted slightly. The mark is darker now, not spreading violently, just extending, like something remembering the original shape of its path. Maven continues. The gate was never designed to remain closed permanently. The Old Dominion didn't believe in permanence, only dormancy. Even the bells seem to pause. That means it will open again, Cassian says. Maven doesn't deny it. Yes. One word. Simple enough to be mistaken for neutrality. It isn't. Lyrienne's hand lowers from her sleeve. The mark has moved further up her arm. Not fast. Not dramatic. Certain. A map continuing itself without asking. She doesn't look at it. That is what unsettles him most. Not fear of the mark. Recognition without surprise. Maven steps toward the center of the hall. There are records beneath Velmora. Old Dominion archives sealed during the Succession Wars. They describe the first breach. A pause. Lyrienne's bloodline was not only present. Longer pause. It was involved. The words settle like dust refusing to leave. Cassian turns slightly toward her. She doesn't move away. Doesn't move closer. Just stands, absorbing information that doesn't feel new to her body, even if it is new to the room. The realization arriving not as shock, but as familiarity, finally given language. Involved how? Cassian says quietly. Maven's eyes don't leave Lyrienne. Willingly. The hall recalibrates around that word. Structurally. The Dominion adjusting how it understands her presence and its walls. Lyrienne closes her eyes. Just 1 second. Opens them. Her breath shifts, not faster. Heavier. Like something inside has redistributed its weight.
I didn't know that, she says.
Not defense. Inventory. Cassian believes her. The belief costs him something small and immediate. Council members begin overlapping again. Strategy, containment, succession, the language of systems trying to survive their own collapse by renaming it. None of it holds full shape anymore. Not after Norhollow. Not after binding. Not after what the room now holds. Lyrienne steps forward once. Then stops. The movement pulls attention like gravity. I didn't choose anything after that, she says quietly. No one responds. The room understands the implication. Not accusation. Possibility. Maven exhales slowly. That is what the records suggest. Memory doesn't always survive the way intent does. Cassian looks at Lyrienne, not as threat, not as victim, as continuity of something older than both of them. Days pass without resolution in any meaningful direction. The Dominion does not fracture further. It simply stops trusting in full directions, moves in partial commitments, speaks in careful partial sentences. Cassian remains in command, but command feels less like authority now, more like temporary agreement. He doesn't remove Lyrienne from his side, doesn't announce it. It becomes visible over time. She is no longer placed at the edges of decisions. She stands near them, always, not protected, not exposed, present. The frost moon returns in its final phase. Velmora Keep is quieter than before, not peaceful, measured. A place that has learned restraint through loss and isn't sure yet whether that's wisdom or simply exhaustion. Cassian and Lyrienne stand together on the upper terrace. Below them, the courtyard holds pale winter lanterns. Snow rests against stone instead of falling. There is less movement now. More listening. The bond between them is stable again, differently than before. Not shared pain. Not intrusion. Awareness. He feels it when she shifts her weight. She feels it when he exhales. Neither speaks. The bells begin beneath the ice. Soft at first, then clearer. Lyrienne's hand tightens slightly at her side. Cassian notices immediately.
He doesn't ask.
He already knows asking won't change what is happening. Her wrist is visible now without adjustment. The mark has extended again. Further than before. Not rushing.
Continuing.
He watches it without comment. Wind moves across the terrace. Cold enough to sharpen silence rather than break it. Lyrienne looks out over Velmora Keep. Not upward. Not outward. Downward. As if listening through stone and winter, and everything that history buried beneath both. Cassian follows her gaze instinctively. Nothing visible, but the bells continue beneath the ice. And this time, they don't feel like warning. They feel like memory repeating itself with slightly different timing. Lyrienne speaks very quietly. Cassian? He turns toward her, but she isn't looking at him. Her eyes are fixed on the space beneath everything. It's spreading, she says. Not fear. Not panic. Observation. Cassian says nothing. Because there is nothing clean left to say that doesn't cost more than silence. Below Velmora Keep, beneath Norhollow Bay, beneath what they sealed and called an ending, something answers again. Not opening. Not closing. Just continuing. As if it was never finished. As if it was only ever waiting for them to stop pretending otherwise. Thanks for watching. If this story drew you in, don't stop here. Your next chapter is already waiting. Tap the thumbnail on your screen and keep the journey alive. And if you felt even a moment of it, the tension, the betrayal, the pull of something deeper, don't just disappear. Leave a like. Drop a comment. Let your voice echo inside Royal Crown Diaries. Because every reaction, every word, every click keeps these stories breathing.